Who says that discussion about world events, history, and yes, even conspiracy can't be fun? Well, after sitting down with film director, producer, and alternative historian Sean Stone, along with 21st Century Wire's own Patrick Henningsen and Dean Ryan, I am convinced that even serious discussion can have its own flavor of humor and lightheartedness. Granted, the subject of this roundtable talk, which took place on location in Los Angeles at the Conscious Life Expo, was anything but funny. We discussed the complexities of the esoteric side of conspiracy and global events, but blend knowledge with extensive research, add a pinch of tongue-in-cheek, and what you'll get is a recipe for an energetic and exciting discussion and an honest desire to want to learn even more. I would really, guys, love to have a little roundtable about the hidden aspect of a conspiracy. Let's call it where the esoteric and the exoteric meet, right? Yeah. We know this word conspiracy, I've looked up in every thesaurus another name because I'm tired of using the name because it's got such a stigma attached to it now, right? I agree. I'm not going to get into the philosophy of what I think it's gone into, but it's a growing buzzword, and when you put theory next to it, it gets even bigger and bigger and bigger. But as burgeoning as this is becoming, there's still a lot of folks that are dipping their toe in the water of what I'll call the exoteric or surface level, and yet are still somewhat oblivious to the fact that there's an underbelly. And that's what I want to talk about, the esoteric. There's the I word. We may bring that up a little later in this talk. But Sean, I know that you have been very diligent about sort of exploring that aspect of this story. Patrick, you as a consummate journalist, have explored all dimensions. Dean, you're right on the forefront as well. So let's just talk about this. How big is what I would call, maybe there's a better word, the esoteric aspect? How much is the esoteric driving? When I say esoteric, the metaphysical, the quote secret societies, etc. There's a lot to that. How big of a deal is that in the carrying out of what we see on the surface level, you think? And anybody can jump in. That means big.
Patrick? I'm not as qualified maybe as these guys to answer that question.
That's what makes your answer. That's what makes it so interesting. Because you're more of an outsider, and maybe in that sense of being more of a student of just conspiracy, and not just conspiracy, but of events. So maybe you could actually kind of see, hey, there's something odd, fishy.
Do you feel that there is something odd and fishy beyond what the physical eyes can process going on here?
Well, I actually started my foray into this little field, big field. I went right in the deep end. Mm-hmm. So I started investigating crop circles, mm-hmm. and lots of other kind of more crazier stuff than what I'm doing now. So I did a regression. So I've come to the surface for various reasons, but I started off with the real.
You did a regression.
Something like that, yeah. So
not a spiritual regression.
I don't know what to say. I've bubbled to the surface from the depths. I started at the depths and I've worked my way up, simply because I found that through this process I wasn't able to articulate a lot of these concepts and ideas with friends, family, work associates. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I thought, well, how best to get people. There's a certain amount of initiation that goes into anything when you have levels of knowledge, whether that's in academia, whether that's if you learn to be a chef. Mm-hmm. You got to make sauces for 6 months. Mm-hmm, right. Before you got to knead dough. If you want to be a master baker, you just sit there and you knead the dough. Mm-hmm. You don't even touch the oven. You do that for a year in France if you look in a boulangerie. Same thing with information. So I thought, well, I need to probably find a strata somewhere between the mainstream and the occult to allow people a doorway, an entryway. I'll give you an example. You talked about Chris Kyle today. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm well aware that Chris Kyle's Craft International mercenary firm that he started were present at the Boston bombings. But I wrote a piece about American Sniper recently. I didn't mention that. The reason I didn't mention that because I knew if I mentioned that in that article, I might lose 20,000 minds. Yeah. So I thought I'll leave that for later because a lot of other people have articulated that rather than ourselves. And so I 21st Century Y is a doorway. If people want to go deeper, there's other venues which they can go to go a little bit deeper. But if you try to be all things to all people,
you can't.
You might not be effective, or you might not achieve anything.
Right.
So
very true.
Very true.
Indeed. Is that why you joined Alex Jones?
Well, I'm going to agree with Patrick on this, but they say 90% of the communication is nonverbal, and there's all the symbology that Sean talks about, and even paranormal stuff. It's just that a lot of people at this Conscious Life Expo speak of. So, are there signs of what the future holds and all these symbols? I'm sure there is, and the Aztecs spoke about it in post-2012 awakening, and I think we're rising consciousness up, and maybe finding what our sixth sense is and what the Egyptians knew.
So what you're saying is that there are, let's assume that there is this, what I call underbelly or foundation, that is of the non-physical realm, let's just say. And again, I think the temptation, especially in the realm of conspiracy, is bad guys, good guys, up, down, this, that, when maybe it's none of it. It's just a neutral thing that those that have less than benevolent motivations will leverage, and others who you're speaking of, like the people that come here that are very interested in the importance of this, also want to use it for benevolent reasons, right? So this, we're talking about this infinitely mysterious aspect to reality.
It is. It's
infinitely.
Mysterious.
Yeah.
I mean, someone kind of helped me understand how mysterious this reality is. They said, look, mirrors are technology. And no one thinks of mirrors as technology, because it's like, oh, mirrors reflect reality. No, they reflect some perception. It's always a reverse. By the way, it's always a reversal of the reality, right? If you hold up your right hand, it looks like it doesn't. It's not exactly the same because it's a reversal of the image, right? Yeah. It's never quite the exact same reflection. But further, the mirrors are in our own eyes, right?
That's right.
And so, as depending on how the dimension of the curvature, obviously, it's going to change the image that we're seeing. So the nature of this reality is, or it's almost mirrored realities, and I think that's what's so interesting about the nature of film, cinema, media, because they are basically giving us mirrored reflections that we tap into as humans, and then start to actually become our mind frame. That's why the Nazis were so concerned with mind war. The idea of like the mind war being the most important battlefield. How do you control propaganda? How do you control what people see when it comes to an image on the news? When you make movies, you start to realize, wait, I'm a magician. I'm cutting the frame. I'm cutting the image here and here. So, in the same with with the TV news, if you show an image of Iraq and it's like, this is Iraq. There's a building burning and there's a man standing in blood. Now my association of Iraq is that image you've created for me, right? And this is just one example, but it's continuous. So the whole nature of the reality is that we're not really ever engaging with reality. We're engaging with reflections that are given to us by certain magicians. And then I think it has, the truth.